of Essex and Suffolk. In 1863 a rectory was built here, and just about every strange phenomena have been reported over the years.
So, Peter Underwood, you are president of the Ghost Club in England, which makes you one of the leading ghost hunters. And here we are at Borley Rectory, one of the most haunted houses in the country. Is that right?
Well, yes, but we're not actually at Borley Rectory, because Borley Rectory stood over there and is no longer there. But I'm quite convinced, beyond any shadow of doubt, that the house that stood just across the road was and fully lived up to its name as the most haunted house in England.
Why are you convinced?
The accumulation of evidence over the years is absolutely shattering. It all began with a legend, and of course the most familiar aspect of the haunting is a ghost nun, which has been seen for something like, well, nearly 100 years. One of the rectors even bricked up one of the windows because he said the phantom nun looked in at him having his breakfast. But over the years, phantom figures have been seen, footsteps have been heard, solid, heavy footsteps on floorboards. Messages have been scribbled on the walls and on pieces of paper, apparently from a French nun asking for light, mass and prayers. Bones have been found, 2 skulls have been found, one was buried in the churchyard, the other...
Were they identified as women, or female, or...?
One of them was identified as a young female, and it's rather interesting because a dental surgeon discovered that there was a deep-seated abscess in the jawbone, and nearly all the people who have reported seeing the nun have said that she appeared sad-faced, unhappy, and of course with a deep-seated abscess she would indeed.
So really we're talking about a ghost of a nun with toothache?
That's what it sounds like, yes, yes. But putting all that on one side, the fact remains you've got the incumbencies of 4 rectors from 1863 rather, until 1935. 4 rectors, their families, wives, many friends and relatives, all of whom assert that they heard, saw and felt things which they can't explain. And I think the accumulative evidence is absolutely overwhelming that this was indeed the most haunted house in England. It was in 1937 that when the Smiths were here, Smith had recently come to England from India, and he just walked into this and he wondered what was happening. He saw a figure, he saw a phantom coach, his lights suddenly blared up, bells rang. He didn't know what to do, and he wrote to the national paper, and they sent down Harry Price, who was the leading psychic investigator at that time. And of course he was fascinated once he heard the story and started making inquiries. The ecclesiastical authorities decided that the house was no longer suitable for a rector to live in, and Price decided to rent it. And he rented the place for a year, arranged independent investigators who again reported identical phenomena: footsteps, lights, noises, bell ringing and so on. And then the place was sold privately to a Crackton Grigson, and while he owned it, a somewhat mysterious fire took place and the place was gutted. But the interesting thing is that once the rectory was destroyed and there was no building on the site, then the entities apparently transferred their activities to the church, where visiting rectors have seen figures, have heard noises. Many visitors have reported footsteps following them up the church path inside the church itself.
At Epping, working on the M11 motorway extension, is one of Borley's most remarkable witnesses. Mr. Croom Hollingsworth and a team of investigators taped recordings in the church and spent many nights observing the rectory grounds.
I got a team together with Roy Potter, and we did actually on the site of the rectory. We concentrated mostly.
Have you seen anything there?
Oh yes, in June, I can't remember the exact date, but in June we sighted the nun.
You did?
Oh yeah, 2 of us.
What time of day?
I would say somewhere about 1:45 in the morning it was. It was absolutely full moon. And first of all, we couldn't really, we were astonished. But when we saw this apparition go through bushes and through railings and across a trench, we knew we were really onto something. So we had an observation actually 11 minutes. And I had a...
How long?
11 minutes.
You watched a ghost for 11 minutes?
11 minutes, exactly. Well, I wouldn't say exactly, but around about 11 minutes. 9 to 11 minutes. Now, this, I had a wonderful view of her because she came towards me and then she stood still for some time, and I was able to have a good look at the nun. She actually started on the original old nun's walk, which is in the back garden of some people's bungalow. And she disappeared in the back part of their bungalow, and then she reappeared and came across into the rectory part. Actually, she finished up behind the rectory and disappeared in some shrubs there. The nun, when she's looking at you, she's not seeing you at all. She's not seeing you. Even when she was supposed to stand in the old days of Harry Price, stand looking in the rectory window, she's not seeing the rectory. She's in her own period. She is seeing something that's there in her period. And that's why she appeared about a foot from the ground, which I...
She wasn't on the ground?
Well, she was a foot above it. Now, this was due, I'm sure, to the original level. Since then, the ground has sunk. So I would say she was at the original level in her period.
Weird experience you're telling me about.
Oh, well...
A woman gliding along a foot above the ground for 10 minutes.
Well, it may seem absurd to you, but I'm going by what I saw. And this, of course, has been substantiated by my chief investigator, who is a very hard-headed person, doesn't believe in this type of thing. In fact, her reaction was to throw a brick.
Throw a brick?
Yes,
At her?
Yes, and went right through, actually.
That's an unkind thing to do.
Well, no, I think it was a good thing to do, because it actually proved that it was nothing fake. Actually, I got in contact with a chap called David Ellis, who was at Cambridge University studying on scholarship and psychic research. And Ellis was that, he was so surprised what we were getting at Borley, and so thrilled. He said, well, now, Luke, have you tried the church? Why not try and do some tape work in that church? And then we concentrated in the church, and we got another person, Denny Densham, because he was very interested in Borley, and he wanted to see for himself if there was anything at Borley. And he came, and he got some amazing results.
So we'll go in and listen to those recordings. And a warning, do not adjust your television picture.